Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Voyage cast, where we offer help beyond the office for the days when life demands more than a session. I'm Ed, your host, your guide, and someone who's walked with a lot of people through pain they didn't think they'd ever get past. Today we're going to be picking up where we left off in part 1 of our 3-part series, Resentment and Release. This is episode 2. If episode 1 was about recognizing the prison you're in, this episode is about understanding why the key in your hand feels so hard to use. Because the truth is, letting go often feels like losing, like you're surrendering, like you're weak. But does it really mean that? Or have we just really misunderstood what forgiveness is actually about? Well, stay tuned for today's episode because we're going to get into it. Letting go sometimes feels like you're losing control, I know. When someone deeply wounds you, emotionally, physically, relationally, you do lose something. You lose maybe your voice, your sense of safety, or the trust you built over the years. And when that happens, it's not just pain. There's a sense of powerlessness that comes along with it. Resentment, as we talked about in our previous episode, sneaks in and offers you something that feels like power. Bitterness becomes a kind of control. You get power being a victim, don't you? It says, you hurt me, but I won't let go. That resentment becomes a way to anchor yourself to something solid. Well, that anchor isn't rooted in justice. It's actually rooted more in trauma. It starts to tell you that your pain is your power. But that's really the trap. It feels like strength, but it's actually a cage. Letting go doesn't feel like healing, I know. It feels like losing the last bit of control you've ever had. But maybe what you're actually letting go of is the illusion of control. Now, I know forgiveness isn't saying everything's okay. So let's be straight about this. Forgiveness doesn't mean that things are okay, that things are fine, that someone's let off the hook necessarily. What happened to you wasn't okay. It wasn't fair, and maybe you didn't deserve it. Forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. Reconciliation requires two people to take ownership, to move towards changing behaviors, and to develop a foundation for trust to grow. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is something you do on your own, in your own heart and mind. So let's be super clear here. Forgiveness never requires you to stay in a situation that's unsafe. It doesn't mean tolerating ongoing harm or reopening some kind of door to abuse. Healthy boundaries protect your future, even as you protect the past. Forgiveness is not about pretending something didn't happen. We're not ignorant and delusional. It's about choosing to stop letting this pain define your worth, your future, or even your body. You're saying to yourself now, I will not carry this anymore. It's like a protest, because you matter too much to keep dragging it. So if this all feels a little abstract, let me introduce you to Mary Johnson. This is a woman who lived this truth of forgiveness in the most extreme and heart-wrenching ways you could possibly imagine. You see, in 1993, Mary's only son was shot and killed during a party altercation by a 16-year-old boy. The grief and rage that followed were deep and unrelenting, if you could possibly imagine. And for 12 years, Mary carried the weight of that pain like a chain. Her anger, her loss, her need for answers, all bound tightly together. You see, eventually, though, she made a choice that surprised even herself. She reached out to O'Shea while he was still in prison. She needed to see if the boy she remembered from court was the same person she would meet across the visiting table. When they sat down together, Mary found not the 16-year-old she had frozen in her mind, but a grown man, one who was remorseful, humbled, and forever changed by what he had done. That meeting became the turning point. In that moment, she realized she was done carrying the anger that had defined her life for over a decade. Over time, something really extraordinary even happened. Mary began to call O'Shea her spiritual son. When he was released in 2010, they became neighbors in Minneapolis. O'Shea would help her with chores. They would speak together at prisons and events for crime survivors, telling their story of reconciliation. Mary even founded a nonprofit, From Death to Life, to help others find healing between victims and offenders. Their journey didn't erase, of course, what happened. That's impossible. And forgiveness didn't mean the tragedy was okay, but it did mean Mary was no longer trapped inside the walls of her own grief. She found a freedom she hadn't thought possible, and in doing so, helped create a story that continues to inspire and transform others. Mary's story shows us something powerful. Forgiveness isn't easy. It's not a quick fix. It's not simple. It often takes years of wrestling, but when it comes, it can change not only a heart, it can change an entire community. But why do we resist forgiveness? Well, there's sort of an underlining factor to our resistance to forgive, and it's grief. Letting go of anger means touching the sadness underneath, that they will never be who you hoped they'd become. You have to grieve that loss. You have to grieve the version of the relationship you wanted and understand that it will not exist. You have to grieve that the apologies that you so long for will likely never come. And let's also be honest, anger is a part of that grief. Anger is normal. Anger says what happened to me mattered and was wrong. It's your body's way of standing up for what was violated. Grief, though it's tender, it asks you to mourn not just what happened, but what didn't happen. And mourning isn't weakness. It's the doorway to healing. You don't get to forgiveness by skipping grief. I promise you have to go through the grief. You get there by walking through it like you're walking through the fire. And sometimes that walk is slow. It's honest, and you may need some support with it. Forgiveness can feel a lot like self-betrayal. And you might wonder, am I dishonoring what I went through? Am I letting them off the hook? Am I rewriting the story unfairly? Well, here's a better way maybe to think about it. Forgiveness is not betrayal. For many people, it is the step forward and sometimes the only step forward. It's a way of saying, I still honor my pain. I still honor what happened. But I'm ready to move towards something more. I'm ready to relinquish those things that happened to me and no longer empower them to control my life. I am more than my pain. It's not about denying the past. It's about refusing to build your entire identity around it. You are more than what was done to you. You are more than the story of betrayal. And you don't have to let go all at once. This isn't about pressure here. It's about permission to grow beyond and to soften so that the anger doesn't just live in you forever. And furthermore, it's about healing so you can move forward in your life. Now, I understand that letting go and learning to forgive might feel sometimes like you're losing leverage. Sometimes resentment becomes emotional leverage. It gives us reasons to stay guarded, to avoid closeness, to justify keeping people at a distance. It justifies that sort of hyper-vigilant neurological state. And for a while, that feels smart. And you know what? It probably is smart, but it is not something we're meant to live like all the time. You're not meant to hold a sword and shield forever. It feels safe, but that's not our job to hold a sword and shield forever. Because over time, if you do, that safety will turn into isolation. You're not building protection anymore. You're starting to build walls. And eventually you realize those walls are keeping everyone out. including the people who actually want to connect with you, the people who love you the most, the people who are willing to die for you. Letting go can feel a lot like losing leverage, but it's really about regaining emotional freedom. You were never meant to hold power through pain. You were meant to hold power through healing. This episode is brought to you by Voyage's Counseling, the mothership of the Voyage cast. If you're stuck grieving or wrestling with past pains, you are not alone, and you don't have to wait for things to get worse before asking for help. So whether you are on a journey, whether the wounds feel big or small, support is for everyone. Our licensed clinicians are here to walk with you through trauma, relationship issues, anxiety, identity, all kinds of things. And at our 5 locations across Colorado and telehealth statewide, you can get the support you need when you need it. We also offer neurofeedback at our Lone Tree office. It's a cutting-edge, brain-based therapy that helps with trauma, emotional regulation, ADHD, and so much more. If you want to connect with us, or if you want to find out what kind of insurances we take, feel free to visit us at voyagescounseling.com. That's VOYAGES, counseling.com. And remember, you do not have to do this alone. The myth of closure. We've been taught to crave closure, but real life rarely offers it the way we want it. Sometimes there's no apology, no confession, no full circle moment that gives us this quote-unquote closure. And that's where forgiveness becomes its own kind of closure. It says, even without justice, even without clarity, I'm done letting this rule me. You don't need someone else's validation to heal. You get to choose peace, even if the other person never makes it right. And forgiveness is our way of making it right. Forgiveness is our way truly of getting closure. So let's say it plainly and kind of redefine or re-understand forgiveness. Forgiveness is choosing to release the inner demand that someone must pay you back to be okay. It doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean excusing. It just means you're done holding the emotional receipts. And remember, this is not a requirement. And some people never choose forgiveness. Some aren't ready. Some have experienced harms that still go on. In other words, they're still stuck in it, so it's very difficult to forgive that person. Forgiveness is one possible way to healing. If you're not there yet, or you never get there, I guess that's okay, but just remember to hold on to that bitterness and the resentment. That's like the poison meant for them, like I talked about in part 1 of this 3-part series. So let's pause for a second. Let's take a little bit of a reflection. I want you to take a big breath and imagine you're holding a heavy book in your hands. It's a ledger. Each page records something that hurt you. Words said, things withheld, betrayals, abandonments, maybe things you've never said out loud. And it's heavy, and you know it's heavy. Now ask yourself, who are you keeping this record for? What does it cost me to keep holding it? Is it protecting me anymore? Or is it just weighing me down? And if this reflection feels overwhelming, pause, don't force it. Reach out to someone safe. You don't have to face the pain all at once or alone. You're allowed to put the book down, even if it's just for a day. Don't worry, your resentments will always be there when you want them. And I know that forgiveness is really, really hard. And to forgive does not mean you're weak, and to struggle with forgiveness does not mean you're weak. To struggle with forgiveness means you're healing. If forgiveness feels hard, that's good, because that means you're actually taking it seriously. That means the wound mattered. You're not behind. You're not doing something wrong. You're healing. Don't sit there and criticize yourself for one moment that you are taking too long or you're just now figuring this out. That's all irrelevant. Anytime you start the process of forgiveness is a good time to start the process of forgiveness. And you don't have to forgive it all or all at once. This will be an ongoing part of your life. But if you want to, and you don't know how, that's where support comes in, man. Like, if you're doing this for a long period of time, you don't have to be the strong one anymore. You can get help. You get to be the one growing. You get to be the one relinquishing the resentment and the bitterness. If today's episode stirred something in you, grief, anger, hope, share it with someone who might be holding on to the same thing too. That doesn't mean you have to sit there and trauma bond with somebody, but maybe somebody who's just kind of been through it. You'll recognize that you weren't alone. You'll recognize that maybe there is a way forward. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. That helps more people find what we're doing through the algorithm overlords. And if you're ready to heal, but you don't know where to start, consider working with a therapist. You don't have to choose us, and you don't have to figure it out alone, but just find help. I'm Ed, and this is the Voyage Cast, bringing you help beyond the office. We'll see you next time in episode 3 of this 3-part series.
Until next time, then, goodbye.